What would you do if the man who swore to protect you, the father of your unborn children, stood by and watched as his mother tried to break you? What if she demanded you, 8 months pregnant with twins, kneel before a crowd of 1,000 people? In the story I'm about to tell you, this is not a what if. It is what happened. She was a trusting wife, on the verge of bringing new life into the world, and they saw her vulnerability as a weakness to be exploited. But they made one catastrophic mistake. They never once imagined that the quiet, unassuming woman they sought to humiliate was, in fact, the most powerful person in the room. They thought they were pushing over a pawn, but they were about to be checkmated by the queen. Stay with me, and I will show you how a woman's pain can be forged into a weapon, and how the coldest revenge is served not on a platter, but on the world stage, leaving her enemies with nothing but the ashes of their own arrogance. If you believe in the power of a woman underestimated and the sweet, satisfying taste of justice, then like this story, subscribe, and share your thoughts on what true strength really is. The weight of the twins was a constant pressing reminder of the future. Alara felt it in the ache of her lower back, the gentle swell of her ankles, and the soft, fluttering kicks against her ribs. It was a beautiful weight, a burden she carried with a quiet, burgeoning joy. Tonight, however, it felt heavier. The silk of her maternity gown, a deep sapphire blue chosen to match her husband's eyes, clung uncomfortably in the humid evening air of the grand ballroom. Julian was across the room, a flute of champagne in his hand, laughing with a circle of men in tailored tuxedos. He looked magnificent. He always did. He was the sun, and people were simply planets, drawn into his charismatic orbit. She was supposed to be his closest satellite, the moon to his sun, but tonight she felt like a distant, forgotten asteroid. She shifted in her chair at their designated table, trying to find a position that offered some relief. The gala was for a major tech merger, an event Julian had been talking about for months. It was a pinnacle moment for his company, a stepping stone to the legacy he was so desperate to build. He had insisted she come, despite her advanced pregnancy. "I need my beautiful wife by my side," he had said, kissing her forehead. "I want everyone to see what I'm fighting for." Now, he seemed to have forgotten she was even in the building. A shadow fell over the table. Beatrice, Julian's mother, stood there, her face a mask of polite disapproval. Her own gown was a severe metallic silver, as unyielding as her personality. She looked at Alara's swollen belly not with the warmth of a grandmother-to-be, but with the critical eye of a sculptor finding a flaw in the marble. "Alara," she said, her voice thin and sharp, "you look tired. Perhaps you should have stayed home." It was not a suggestion born of concern, it was a judgment. "I'm fine, Beatrice, just enjoying the evening from a comfortable seat," Alara replied, forcing a smile. Her smile never seemed to reach her eyes when Beatrice was near. Beatrice's gaze swept the room, landing back on her son. "Julian is making quite the impression. This deal will solidify our family's position for generations. It is crucial that everything goes perfectly tonight, no distractions." The final 2 words were aimed directly at Alara's midsection. Alara felt a familiar prickle of resentment. To Beatrice, she was a distraction. Her pregnancy was an inconvenience. Her very presence was a footnote in the grand story of the family's ambition. She chose to ignore the barb. "Julian has worked very hard. He deserves all the success." Beatrice sniffed, a small bird-like sound of contempt. "Success is not deserved. It is taken, and it is protected. Which brings me to the matter of Mr. Sterling." She gestured with her chin towards an elderly man at a nearby table. "You were speaking to him earlier. You were laughing." Alara blinked. "Yes, he was telling me a story about his first grandchild. It was very sweet." "Mr. Sterling is a direct competitor to one of our key investors," Beatrice hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Your public display of camaraderie was inappropriate. It suggests a lack of loyalty. It makes Julian look weak." This was absurd. A polite conversation about a baby was now an act of corporate espionage. "Beatrice, I assure you it was nothing of the sort. We were simply making small talk." "It is how things are perceived that matters," Beatrice snapped. Her eyes, cold and dark, narrowed. "People are watching. Our family's reputation is on the line. You have embarrassed your husband. You will apologize." Alara's breath hitched. Apologize? To whom? For what? You will apologize to me for your carelessness, and you will do it in a way that shows true remorse. You will show Mr. Sterling and anyone else who might have been watching that you understand the gravity of your mistake. A cold dread began to pool in Alara's stomach, a feeling far heavier than the twins. She saw where this was going. She had seen this manipulative game before in smaller, more private settings, but never like this, not here. I don't understand what you want me to do, Alara said, her own voice barely a whisper. Beatrice's lips curved into a cruel, thin smile. It was the smile of a predator that had cornered its prey. You will show deference. You will show humility. You will get up from that chair, come to where I am standing, and you will kneel. The world seemed to stop. The music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses all faded into a dull roar in Alara's ears. Kneel? Here? 8 months pregnant? In front of 1,000 of the city's elite? It was a demand of such profound cruelty, such medieval dominance that she couldn't process it. She looked for Julian. Her eyes scanned the crowd desperately. He was still with his group, but he had turned slightly. He was watching them. He could see the tension in his mother's stance, the shock on his wife's face. He had to have seen it. He met her eyes for a fleeting second, a flicker of something, annoyance, resignation, crossed his face before he turned away, giving a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. He was telling her to just do it, to appease his mother, to smooth things over. He was leaving her to this. The betrayal was a physical blow, sharper than any contraction. It knocked the air from her lungs. He wasn't going to save her. He was sanctioning this humiliation. No, Alara said, the word small but firm. Beatrice's eyes flashed with fury. What did you say? I said no. I will not kneel, Beatrice. You are a foolish, stubborn girl, the older woman seethed. You will do as you are told, or I will make sure Julian understands the consequences of being married to a disobedient wife. She took a step closer, her presence looming. Do it now. The moment stretched into an eternity. Alara felt the stares of people at nearby tables. The drama was beginning to draw an audience. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of panic and rage. Her love for Julian, a vast and steady landscape she had built her life upon, began to crack. Fissures spread through it, deep and irreparable. In that moment, watching him turn his back on her, she didn't just feel betrayed, she felt erased. Then, a new voice cut through the tension, calm and authoritative. Is there a problem here, Beatrice? A tall man with silvering hair and a kind, discerning face had appeared beside their table. It was Marcus Thorne, the CEO of the tech giant hosting the gala. He was the man Julian was so desperate to impress. Beatrice immediately straightened, her cruel demeanor vanishing behind a mask of syrupy charm. Marcus, not at all. I was just having a quiet word with my daughter-in-law. Marcus Thorne did not look at Beatrice. His eyes, full of a strange and knowing concern, were fixed on Alara. He extended a hand to her. I was hoping I might have a word with you myself, if you're feeling up to it. There's a matter of some urgency we need to discuss. He completely ignored Beatrice's sputtering attempt to interject. His focus was solely on the pregnant woman in the chair. He helped her to her feet, his touch gentle and respectful. Of course, Alara said, her voice shaking slightly. As Marcus helped her navigate around the table, he paused and looked back, first at the fuming Beatrice, and then across the room at the suddenly very attentive Julian. His voice was not loud, but it carried with absolute clarity across the sudden hush that had fallen over the immediate area. Excuse us, Marcus Thorne said, his tone laced with ice. I need to escort Miss Chairman to the stage. The keynote address is about to begin. The air left the room. Beatrice's jaw fell open, a caricature of disbelief. Across the ballroom, the champagne flute slipped from Julian's numb fingers, shattering on the polished marble floor. Miss Chairman. The two words echoed in the silence, a detonation that blew Alara's old life to smithereens and cleared the way for the war that was to come. The walk home was a silent, suffocating ordeal. Julian drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The air in the car was thick with his unasked questions and her unspoken rage. The mask had been ripped away, not just from her, but from him. She had seen the man she married for what he was, a coward, a puppet whose strings were pulled by his venomous mother. When they finally entered the sterile, minimalist expanse of their penthouse apartment, he broke the silence. "Chairman?" he asked, the word sounding alien on his tongue. What was that? What did he mean? Alara walked slowly to the vast floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering cityscape below. She didn't turn to face him. He meant exactly what he said, Julian. "I am the chairman of Thorne Industries, the majority shareholder. Marcus is my CEO." She heard his sharp intake of breath. The silence that followed was heavier than before. It was the sound of a universe reordering itself. The sound of a man realizing the floor beneath his feet was not solid ground, but a carefully constructed illusion. "But how?" he stammered. "Your family. You told me they had a small inheritance." "My father was a quiet man," Alara said, her voice cold and even. "He disliked attention. He founded the company under a different name and built it through a series of shell corporations and trusts. He put Marcus in place as the public face years ago. The inheritance wasn't small, Julian. It was everything." He was quiet for a long time. She could feel his mind racing, connecting dots, reevaluating every moment of their life together, the vacations she'd paid for, the seed money for his first venture, the down payment on this very apartment. He had assumed it was family money, yes, but he had assumed it was a finite, well, he was generously helping her manage. He never imagined it was an ocean, and he was just a man playing in the shallows. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked. His voice was different now, not angry, not confused. It was calculating. That was the moment the last vestiges of her love for him died. He wasn't hurt that she hadn't trusted him with her secret. He was furious that he hadn't known about the scope of her power. He was recalculating his own value, his own position. "I wanted to be loved for who I am, not for my bank account," she said, the words tasting like ash. "I wanted a partner, an equal. I thought that was you." "I am your partner," he insisted, taking a step towards her. "This doesn't change anything, Alara. This is wonderful news. We're a team. Think of what we can do together." She finally turned to face him. The look in her eyes made him stop cold. The warmth was gone. The affection, the adoration he had taken for granted for so long, had been replaced by something glacial and unnerving. "A team," she repeated softly. "A team doesn't let one of its members get humiliated in public. A team doesn't stand by while his mother demands his pregnant wife kneel on the floor. A team doesn't turn its back." His face flushed with guilt, quickly replaced by defensive anger. "My mother is difficult. You know that. I was going to handle it. I was trying to keep the peace for the sake of the deal. A deal, I might add, that would have benefited us both." "The deal is dead, Julian." "What? You can't be serious. This is the biggest moment of my career." "Your career," she said, "was built on my money. Your company is propped up by my investments. Your entire life, this apartment, that car, the watch on your wrist, it's all mine. I was happy to share it. I was happy for it to be ours, but ours is over." The next morning, she began her investigation. It wasn't an investigation into his infidelity in the traditional sense. His betrayal was deeper than that. This was an investigation into the rot at the core of their marriage. While he was at his office, likely scrambling to do damage control after the Gala's shocking conclusion, she sat at his desk. His password was, predictably, their anniversary. The arrogance of it, the sheer, unthinking hubris, was staggering. He had never once considered she might have a reason to look. She didn't start with his emails to other women. She started with his emails to his mother. The correspondence went back years. It was a cesspool of casual disrespect that slowly escalated into outright contempt. He complained about Alara's simple tastes. He mocked her desire for a quiet life. He belittled her intelligence, calling her sweet but naive. He and his mother were allies in a long, secret war against the woman he purported to love. "She's getting sentimental about the pregnancy," one of Julian's emails read, talking about nurseries and names. "I keep reminding her to focus on the big picture, on what this means for us, for the family name. She doesn't get it." Beatrice's reply: "You must guide her, my son. Her mind is weak, especially now. You are the head of the household. Her inheritance, however modest, is a tool for you to use for the family's advancement. Do not let her sentimentality get in the way of your destiny. It was all there. The systematic gaslighting, the dismissal of her feelings, the view of her as not a partner but a resource, a pleasantly decorated vault to be plundered. Then she moved to the financials. He had a separate folder, brazenly labeled JV Ventures. Inside were statements for accounts she had never seen. Using the access codes from their joint accounts, which she had funded entirely, she began to trace the money. He had been siphoning funds for years, small amounts at first, then larger and larger sums, funneling her money into his own private accounts, using it to fund high-risk investments he presented to her as his own brilliant successes. He had built his reputation, his company, his entire identity as a self-made man on a foundation of her stolen wealth. The pain was a physical thing, a cold, heavy stone in her chest where her heart used to be. Every click of the mouse, every opened file was another blow. This wasn't a simple mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a calculated, long-term deception. He had been playing a role, the loving husband, while secretly holding her in complete contempt. The worst was yet to come. Buried deep in a subfolder was a draft of a legal document, a prenuptial agreement, but it wasn't for them. The names on the document were Julian Vance and a woman named Chloe Sterling, Mr. Sterling's ambitious, ruthless daughter, a direct competitor. The woman Beatrice had accused Alara of being too friendly with. It all clicked into place. The deal Julian was chasing wasn't just with Thorne Industries. It was a complex merger that involved Sterling's company as well. He wasn't just trying to build a business, he was planning a dynasty, a new one, with a new wife. Once he secured the deal, leveraging Alara's power, which he now knew about, he would have a platform. He would divorce the simple, sentimental pregnant wife and marry into a rival family, consolidating his power. The document was dated 3 weeks ago. He had been planning to leave her. After the birth of their twins, he would discard her. The stone in her chest did not shatter, it hardened. It turned from a weight of grief into a core of pure, cold fury. The tears she thought would come never did. Her vision sharpened. Her mind, which Julian and Beatrice had so casually dismissed as simple, became a razor. She picked up her phone. She did not call a divorce lawyer. She did not call a friend to cry to. She made a single call. "Marcus," she said when he answered, "it's worse than we thought. I need the team, the A-team, legal, finance, forensic accounting. Book the war room for tomorrow at 9 a.m. We are no longer defending. We're going on the attack." There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then Marcus's calm, steady voice replied, "They'll be ready, Miss Chairman. What's the objective?" Alara looked at the skyline her father's company had helped build. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the steady, rhythmic movement of her children within. They were the only thing that mattered now, her future. "The objective," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion, "is annihilation, total and complete." The war room was a sterile, soundproof conference room on the top floor of the Thorne Industries tower, a place that didn't officially exist on any directory. Present were Marcus, the company's fiercely loyal CEO, Lena Petrova, a corporate lawyer so sharp she could have weaponized a paper cut, and Ben Carter, a forensic accountant who could find a single misplaced cent in the Vatican's treasury. Alara stood before a smartboard, a stark contrast to the vulnerable woman from the Gala. She was calm, methodical, her pregnancy not a weakness, but a source of formidable primal strength. She was no longer fighting for a marriage, she was fighting for the future of her children. "Here is the situation," she began, her voice ringing with an authority none in the room had heard from her before, but all implicitly recognized. "Julian Vance, my husband, has been systematically embezzling funds from me for the past 7 years to build his company, Vance Strategic." She laid it all out. The secret accounts, the emails with his mother, the draft of the prenuptial agreement with Chloe Sterling. Ben Carter listened intently, his fingers flying across a laptop, already cross-referencing databases and financial networks. Lena Petrova simply nodded, her expression grim. She had seen this kind of narcissistic greed before. "His entire company is a house of cards built with my money," Alara continued, "but he thinks he's a genius. His ego is the key. Right now, he is desperate to salvage his merger deal. He believes his connection to me is his trump card. He thinks he can manipulate me, use my love for him to get what he wants. He called me 3 times this morning, Marcus interjected, pleading for a meeting. He's spinning a story about his mother being ill and causing a scene out of stress. He's trying to frame you as forgiving. Perfect, Alara said with a chilling smile. Let him think that. Lena, I want you to draw up divorce papers, the most brutal, ironclad papers you can imagine. We're not just divorcing, we're reclaiming every stolen asset. Ben, I need a full audit of Vance Strategic. Every invoice, every wire transfer. I want to know where every single one of my dollars went. Ben nodded. Give me 48 hours. I'll give you a map of his financial soul. Good, Alara said, turning back to the board. Now for the main event, the deal. He thinks it's dead. We're going to resurrect it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You want to go into business with him? No, Alara corrected. I want to let him think we are. He's over-leveraged. He's taken out massive loans against the promise of this merger. We are going to signal that the deal is back on the table. We will engage in negotiations. We will let him drive his company deeper into debt to meet our demands. We will let him commit completely, publicly. Lena Petrova smiled for the first time. You're going to let him walk himself to the edge of the cliff. I'm going to let him do a swan dive, Alara replied. We will schedule a public signing ceremony. Press, investors, the works. It will be his moment of ultimate triumph. He'll sign the papers, and in that moment, his company's value will be at its peak, and its debt at its most catastrophic. And then, Marcus asked. And then, Alara said, her eyes glinting like steel, Ben will have completed his audit. We will have irrefutable proof of felony embezzlement and fraud. Instead of a merger, Thorne Industries will announce a hostile takeover of a financially compromised Vance Strategic to be purchased for pennies on the dollar. And as my divorce filing becomes public, citing financial crimes, I will personally file the criminal charges against him. He won't just lose his company, he will lose his freedom. The plan was audacious, it was ruthless, it was beautiful. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Alara played the part of the wounded, forgiving wife. She agreed to meet Julian for dinner. He was contrite, apologetic, blaming everything on his mother's overbearing nature. He swore his love for her, for their unborn children. He held her hand, his eyes pleading. It was like watching a movie. She felt nothing. She was an actress on a stage, playing a role for an audience of one. I know this deal means everything to you, Julian, she said softly, feigning reluctance. Maybe there's a way forward. If you can prove to me that you're truly sorry, that you'll put me and the babies first from now on. He seized the opportunity, his eyes lighting up. Anything, Alara, anything at all. The negotiations began. Marcus's team was merciless, demanding more and more from Vance Strategic. They needed to upgrade their infrastructure, hire new staff, open a new international office, all things that required massive cash outlays. Julian, high on his apparent victory, agreed to everything. He took out more loans. He sold off personal assets, the few that were actually his. He convinced his mother to invest the last of her fortune into the company to meet the capital requirements. While he was busy digging his own grave, Alara was preparing for her new life. She had her legal team quietly create a new trust for her children, firewalled from everything. She bought a new home in a different state under a corporate name, a beautiful, secure estate where she and her twins could live in peace. She methodically signed the documents prepared by Lena and Ben, dismantling her old life and building her fortress. The day of the signing ceremony arrived. It was held in the very same ballroom as the gala. Julian was on top of the world, preening for the news cameras. He kissed Alara on the cheek as she arrived, whispering, "See? I told you we were a team. Now we're truly unstoppable." She just smiled, a serene, knowing smile that he completely misinterpreted. Beatrice was there, sitting in the front row, smug and triumphant. She had won. Her son was a titan of industry, and the foolish, simple girl had been put back in her place. Julian took the stage to thunderous applause. He gave a speech full of cliches about vision and synergy. He thanked his brilliant team. He thanked his investors. Then he looked at Alara. And most of all, he said, his voice thick with false emotion, I want to thank my beautiful, supportive wife, Alara. She is my rock, my inspiration. This victory is for her and for our 2 little ones on the way." The room awed. Ilara felt a wave of nausea, but her expression remained placid. Finally, it was time. Julian sat at the signing table, a row of expensive pens laid out before him. Marcus Thorne stepped up to the podium. "Thank you, Julian," Marcus began, his voice calm and professional. "It is indeed a momentous day." He paused, looking out at the expectant crowd. Partnerships are built on trust, on transparency, on a shared vision for the future. And during our due diligence process, we at Thorne Industries discovered some truly visionary things about Vance Strategic. Julian beamed, puffing out his chest. "We discovered a level of financial creativity that was, frankly, breathtaking," Marcus continued, a subtle edge creeping into his voice. "And it all led back to one source, one person whose capital and assets formed the very bedrock of this company. A person who, until recently, preferred to remain in the background, but today it's time to put credit where credit is due." Julian's smile began to falter. He looked confused. "Before we sign any agreements," Marcus said, his voice now resonating with power, "I would like to introduce the true architect of this success, the majority shareholder and chairman of the board of Thorne Industries. Please welcome to the stage Miss Alara Vance." A spotlight hit Alara. A gasp went through the room. She stood up, calm and deliberate, and walked towards the stage, her every step a hammer blow against Julian's world. Julian shot to his feet, his face pale with shock and dawning horror. "What is this, Marcus? What's going on?" Alara didn't look at him. She walked directly to the podium as Marcus stepped aside. She looked out at the sea of stunned faces, her gaze sweeping over Beatrice, whose face had crumpled in on itself. "There has been a change of plans," Alara announced, her voice clear and steady, amplified by the microphone. "There will be no merger today." Panic erupted in Julian's eyes. "Alara, stop it! What are you doing?" "Thorne Industries has discovered significant financial malfeasance within Vance Strategic," she continued, ignoring him, "including evidence of large-scale embezzlement directly from a primary investor. As a result, we are withdrawing our merger offer. Instead, we have initiated a hostile takeover bid for all of Vance Strategic's assets, which, given its now crippling debt, we expect to acquire for a nominal fee." She finally turned her head and looked directly at the man she once loved. "Furthermore," she said, her voice dropping to an icy whisper that was nonetheless carried to every corner of the silent room, "as that primary investor, I have just filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office. And these," she held up a thick manila envelope, "are my divorce papers, citing among other things massive financial fraud. Security?" 2 uniformed officers who had been standing discreetly at the back of the room began to walk forward. Julian stared at her, his face a mask of utter devastation. The charm, the arrogance, the confidence, it all melted away, leaving behind a pathetic, terrified man. "Ilara, no, please, our family, the babies." "You have no family," she said, her words a final, fatal cut. "You have only the consequences of your own actions." She placed one hand on her pregnant belly, a queen protecting her dynasty. As the officers reached the stage and put their hands on a sputtering, collapsing Julian Vance, Alara looked out at the wreckage of his life. In the front row, Beatrice had fainted. The cameras flashed, capturing the downfall, but Alara felt nothing but a quiet, clean, and victorious peace. Her future was her own.